These are the final moments of 29-year-old Tatiane Spitzner's life as she desperately tries to fight off her husband, Luis Felipe Manvalle, in an elevator. Later that evening, he would beat and strangle her to death before ultimately throwing her corpse off of their 4K-floor apartment balcony. Tatiane and Luis Felipe had been married for 5 years. On the surface, they seemed to have it all: thriving careers, a beautiful home, and a picture-perfect relationship. The couple had met in 2013, and it wasn't long before Luis Felipe was head over heels in love. The pair seemed like a perfect match, and soon got engaged. The engagement only lasted a little over 2 weeks before they took the plunge and got married. To the outside world, it seemed like a fairy tale ending, but behind closed doors, Tatiane was living a nightmare, enduring relentless physical and emotional abuse at the hands of her controlling, jealous husband. There were no previous reports against Luis Felipe relating to domestic violence prior to the marriage, yet things changed and he became increasingly worse. The events leading up to Tatiana's tragic death began on the night of July 21st, when the couple went out to celebrate Luis Felipe's 32nd birthday with friends. Witnesses reported that an argument erupted between the two at the restaurant over Luis Felipe's suspicions that Tatiane was being unfaithful. Despite her attempts to reassure him, his rage only escalated. When they returned home to their apartment building in the early hours of July 22nd, the fight turned physical. The assault started while the couple were still in the car, and as the minutes ticked by, it only grew worse and more violent. Security cameras captured the horrifying assault in the building's garage, elevator, and hallways. Luis Felipe can be seen viciously beating Tatiane, slamming her head against the elevator walls, punching her repeatedly in the face and body, and dragging her by the hair as she tries desperately to escape. Tatiane managed to briefly break free and ran towards the elevator, frantically pushing the button in a desperate attempt to get away. But Luis Felipe caught up to her, forcing his way inside and continuing the brutal attack as the doors closed. It was the last time Tatiane was seen alive. Approximately 15 minutes later, security cameras outside the building captured a chilling scene. Tatiane's lifeless body plummeting from the couple's 4th-floor balcony, landing on the sidewalk below with a sickening thud. Moments later, Luis Felipe emerged from the building, picked up Tatiane's body, and carried it back inside to the elevator. He placed her on the floor, paced back and forth, and then exited, returning with a rag to wipe away the blood from the elevator walls and his hands. With an eerie calmness, he returned to the apartment, leaving Tatiane's battered body crumpled in the elevator. He then fled the scene in his car, making it about 300 kilometers before crashing on the highway, where he was apprehended by police. The video, when released, shocked and disgusted the public, only highlighting the increasing issue of domestic violence faced by women in Brazil. But what was even more horrendous was the knowledge that for the 15 minutes that Tatiane was being beaten, neighbors could hear everything, and yet no one intervened. When questioned after his arrest, Luis Felipe claimed that Tatiane had jumped from the balcony herself, committing suicide. He said he ran because he was too distraught after witnessing it, but the evidence told a very different story. The autopsy revealed that Tatiane had been dead before her body ever hit the pavement. She had been strangled to death, with hand-shaped bruises on her neck and a fractured hyoid bone, injuries consistent with asphyxiation, not a fall. There were no traces of cortisol or adrenaline in her system, which would have been present if she were alive and alert when she plunged from the balcony. As the investigation unfolded, a disturbing history of abuse and control emerged. Friends came forward with chilling accounts Tatiane had shared with them in the months before her death. In text messages, she confided that she was afraid of Luis Felipe, that he regularly mistreated her, and that she wanted a divorce but felt trapped. Those close to the couple described Luis Felipe as extremely jealous and controlling. He monitored Tatiane's spending, destroyed clothing he didn't approve of her wearing, and vehemently refused her requests to hire help for household chores, insisting it was a woman's duty. Colleagues at the university where Luis Felipe taught biology noted his coldness and reported that he had become increasingly muscular in the months before the murder, likely due to steroid abuse. Experts say the drugs could have intensified his aggression and violent tendencies. In May 2022, nearly 4 years after Tatiane's death, Luis Felipe was sentenced to 31 years in prison for her murder, which prosecutors successfully argued was a clear case of femicide, the killing of a woman by an intimate partner. Luis Felipe continued to maintain his innocence throughout the trial, despite the mountain of evidence against him. He continued the charade of acting as though Tatiane had killed herself. His lawyers said they planned to appeal the sentencing. For Tatiane's devastated family, the conviction brought a measure of justice, but also renewed determination to keep Tatiane's memory alive and fight for change. Her sister, Tatiane Spitzner, started an Instagram page called Todos por Tatiane, Everyone for Tatiane, dedicated to honoring Tatiane and raising awareness about gender-based violence. The page quickly gained over 60,000 followers, becoming a powerful platform for Brazilians to share their own stories, support survivors, and demand action to address the country's epidemic of femicide. In 2019 alone, nearly 5 women per day were killed by a current or former intimate partner in Brazil, giving it one of the highest rates in the world. Tatiane Spitzner, in an emotional statement following Luis Felipe's conviction, said the tragedy of losing Tatiane has only strengthened her resolve to be a voice for victims and a force for change. My sister's life was stolen from her in the cruelest way by someone who was supposed to love and protect her, she said. But her death will not be in vain. We will keep telling her story, honoring her memory, and fighting until not one more woman has to suffer what Tatiane did. She will be our guiding light. The case has also prompted soul-searching and calls for reform across Brazil. Many are demanding better protections for victims, harsher penalties for abusers, and education to shift the deeply entrenched culture of machismo and violence against women. Tatiane's story has become a rallying cry in the growing movement. When we hear Tatiane's name, let it be a reminder of all the Tatianes whose suffering remains in the shadows, said one survivor, Maria, at a vigil marking the anniversary of Tatiane's death. Let it be a reminder of our collective responsibility to speak out, to support, and to never accept violence as normal or inevitable. As the case of Tatiane Spitzner fades from the headlines, her family and the wider community are determined to ensure her legacy lives on in the stories shared, the changes sparked, and the countless lives she continues to touch. Through raising awareness, supporting survivors, and demanding systemic change, they hope to build a society where love doesn't hurt, where partners protect instead of harm, and where every Tatiane can live free from fear. It is a mission both daunting and urgent, driven by the unshakable belief that a different future is possible, one that Tatiane and so many others deserved. As the march forward continues, Tatiane's spirit remains a constant presence, in the strength of those who loved her, in the voices raised in her name, and in the unwavering commitment to creating a world she would be proud of. A world where love is a refuge, never a weapon. A world where stories like hers are not warnings, but a distant memory of a time we have left behind.